In January 1945, German mothers were baking potato cakes from sawdust and telling their children the Führer would bring real food any day now. By May, those same women were burning Hitler's portrait in their stoves and swearing they never believed a word. For months. That's how long it took for an entire nation to flip from devotion to denial, and the moment it happened, the exact second, can be traced to one single broadcast most of them refused to accept even as they heard it with their own ears. This is about the psychological collapse of faith in something people built their entire identities around. Not military defeat, not territory lost, but the precise moment when believing became impossible, when the machinery of self-deception finally broke down, and what happened to people's minds when everything they defended, sacrificed for, and sent their sons to die for turned out to be built on absolutely nothing. By January 1945, German civilians had spent 5 years performing an exhausting mental ballet. The official story never quite matched what they saw through their windows, but they'd gotten expert at smoothing over the gaps. Yes, the radio said Germany was winning, but Heinz from next door came home without legs. Yes, rationing was temporary, but little Greta hadn't tasted butter in 2 years. Yes, Berlin was safe, but those were definitely Allied bombers overhead every night. The trick was holding two opposite truths in your head at once and pretending the friction didn't exist. Most people had mastered it. They had to. But something shifted that winter. The refugees started arriving first. Not soldiers, not defeated troops, just ordinary families from the east, streaming into German towns with everything they owned on wooden carts. These weren't propaganda images. These were real people, Germans like them, with frostbite and empty eyes, and they brought stories that made no sense according to the newsreels. Soviet forces weren't just advancing, they were close. Villages were gone. Cities were falling. And these refugees weren't soldiers making excuses for failure. They were mothers who'd walked 300 kilometers in the snow because staying meant something worse than freezing. The Nazi Party officials told everyone to ignore the refugees. Called them defeatists. Traitors spreading panic. But you can't unsee a frozen child. You can't watch a woman boil tree bark for soup and still believe victory is weeks away. The cognitive load became unbearable. In her diary, a Hamburg schoolteacher named Elizabeth Koenig wrote in February 1945, "The radio says we are counterattacking near Budapest. My neighbor's entire family arrived yesterday from East Prussia with nothing but the clothes on their backs. They say the Russians are in Königsberg. Both things cannot be true. I choose to believe neither." That sentence captures something crucial. Elizabeth didn't choose to believe the refugees instead of the radio. She chose to stop believing anything at all. That's the psychological defense mechanism that kicked in first. Not rebellion. Not resistance. Just a kind of numb withdrawal, where you stop making sense of the world because the effort of maintaining contradictory beliefs finally exhausts you completely. What happened next made that withdrawal impossible. On January 30, 1945, Adolf Hitler gave what would be his final radio address to the German people. They'd heard his voice for 12 years, in beer halls and stadiums, crackling through speakers in town squares during mandatory listening sessions. His voice meant authority, certainty. The promise that Germany's suffering had meaning and victory was guaranteed. But this broadcast was different. His voice sounded wrong. Hollow. Like he was reading words written by someone else. He promised total victory and final triumph, but there was no fire behind it, no conviction. People listening in their kitchens, in basement shelters, in factory break rooms, they heard the emptiness, and something inside them cracked. A Cologne factory worker named Wilhelm Becker later testified, "I stood with 40 other men listening. We'd been ordered to attend. When the speech ended, no one moved. No one saluted. No one said the usual things. We just walked away." I don't think any of us believed him anymore, but admitting that out loud would mean admitting we'd been fools for years. So we said nothing. That silence spread everywhere. Teachers still taught Nazi curriculum, but with less enthusiasm. Officials still collected for the Winter Relief Fund, but people handed over coins without eye contact. The entire performance continued, but everyone was just going through motions now, waiting for something to break. The party sensed it. SS officers started appearing in towns, hanging deserters from lampposts with signs around their necks. "I was too cowardly to defend the fatherland." The message was clear. Keep believing or this is you. Terror became the last tool when propaganda stopped working. But terror only works if people still think you're in control. By March, Allied forces crossed the Rhine. By April, they were pushing into Germany from both sides. The refugees weren't just from the east anymore. They were from everywhere, clogging roads, sleeping in barns, begging for food no one had. The gap between official reality and actual reality became so enormous that even performing belief felt absurd. In Berlin, Goebbels was still broadcasting promises of secret wonder weapons that would turn the tide. Meanwhile, women were trading family heirlooms for moldy potatoes and Soviet artillery was audible from the suburbs. The breaking point came differently for everyone, but for most it centered on one moment, April 30th, 1945. The day the radio went silent. Not broken, not jammed, just silent. Hours passed. Then the music started, somber, classical, the kind they played after major announcements. German civilians knew that pattern. They'd heard it before when Rommel died, when defeats needed to be dressed up as glorious sacrifices. The music played all evening. No news. No explanation. Just Wagner and Beethoven on loop. The next day, May 1st, Admiral Karl Donitz came on the radio and announced that Hitler had died fighting heroically at his headquarters in Berlin, and that Donitz would continue the war. That was the official story. Hitler died like a soldier. Noble. Brave. The problem was, within hours, people heard different versions. Whispers about suicide. About a bunker. About cowardice. And this time, they believed the whispers because the whispers made sense in a way the official story didn't. A Munich housewife named Anna Fest wrote to her sister. They say he shot himself in a basement while Berlin burned above him. I don't know if it's true, but I know this. I spent 6 years defending his name. My son died at Stalingrad for him. And if he quit while we kept fighting, while we starved and burned and buried our children, then I was the fool. I can't forgive that. I won't. That rage, that feeling of being betrayed, of having sacrificed for someone who gave up first, that's what replaced belief. Not Allied propaganda. Not sudden moral awakening. Just the crushing realization that they'd suffered for nothing, that all the death and hunger and terror had been pointless because the man they trusted quit before they did. The psychological flip was instant and absolute. Within days, portraits of Hitler disappeared from living rooms. People claimed they'd always had doubts, always seen through the lies, always been secret skeptics. The collective amnesia happened so fast it was almost coordinated, except it wasn't coordination. It was millions of people independently choosing the same survival strategy. Erase the past. Rewrite your story. Become someone who never really believed. But here's what makes it complicated. They did believe. For years. Passionately. They cheered. They voted. They reported neighbors. They sent sons to war willingly. The belief was real, and switching it off didn't erase what they'd done while believing. It just created a new kind of burden, the knowledge that you're capable of believing absolutely in something that turns out to be built on nothing, and that you might not recognize it happening until it's far too late. After the surrender, Allied forces conducted thousands of interviews with German civilians. The same patterns appeared everywhere. Denial. Deflection. Claims that they'd been deceived, that they hadn't known about the camps, the killings, the full truth of what their belief had enabled. Some of that was self-protection. Some was genuine. Most was both at once. Because belief works like that. It shapes what you let yourself see, what questions you allow yourself to ask, what contradictions you smooth over to avoid the discomfort of doubt. The moment German civilians stopped believing wasn't a single dramatic realization. It was 1,000 small cracks that finally shattered at once when the center gave up first. And what replaced belief wasn't clarity or moral reckoning. It was just the exhausting work of living with what belief had cost, and the quiet terror of knowing how easily it could happen again.